Hey, everybody, welcome to, I guess we can rename this, the Realignment Podcast with Mike McFeely. I'm Dom Izzo. We did this a few times through the summer, and lo and behold, its topic is back resurfacing. Not that it ever really went away. We just didn't talk about it.
And this is something of an emergency podcast where you should have the siren.
Yeah.
Woo, woo, woo,
there it is.
Woo, woo, because I got a desperate text about 15 minutes ago saying, let's do a podcast.
Was that from me?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And so here I am.
Chris Vanini, who does a great job covering college football for The Athletic. New story out today, headline, Conference Realignment. The American could add new schools soon, and the Mountain West is a target. Now, you have to read into this a bit before you do find something of interest here. And for the first time, I can see nationally, and our colleague Jeff Culhane, who calls Bison football on 1660, pointed this out, and he's accurate on this, the first time nationally that North Dakota State's name has been mentioned in a realignment chatter nationally.
It's the first that it has been made
in this
public.
round, yeah.
I mean, and so who knows, maybe every conference has at least brought their name up, or maybe none of them have until now, but this is a little game changer in terms of now the name has been mentioned among athletic directors of a group of 5 conference.
Let me read exactly this, and I want to get your reaction from it. Some people in the Mountain West Conference have pointed to North Texas, Rice, and Texas San Antonio as potential additions if the conference wants to reach into Texas, while also pointing to North Dakota State if on-field success is more important. Unlike the AAC, the American, there are not many options within the current footprint out west.
No, and all of that is what we expected.
We know
is that North Texas and Texas San Antonio and Rice were going to be in the mix if the Mountain West lost teams. And Texas is an attraction for these conferences. It because it's Texas, and there's football.
But there's no eyeballs on any of those schools, though.
No, there's not.
Right?
But it's Texas, and NDSU is in North Dakota.
Yep.
And I don't think you can even argue that the brand of North Dakota State football is far better than the brand of
any of those
North
combined.
Texas, Rice,
combined,
and Texas San Antonio combined. Yeah. But San Antonio is a major market.
It is.
And I know I couldn't tell you what the UTSA nickname is.
Roadrunners.
No clue.
It's the Roadrunners.
None. Okay. And so, if you're the Mountain West, if you're going to add a school or two, what does that do for you?
Craig Bowl told me a long time ago, because Craig was an assistant at Rice, and he said, no one cares about Rice in Houston, Texas. I mean,
you're right.
And he's absolutely right. In the 35 years since he's been there, does anybody ever know about Rice football?
Nope.
Right.
Tommy Kramer went to Rice.
I didn't know that.
Yes, the former Vikings quarterback was a Rice.
Wow.
Other than that,
Jeez.
I can't name a player that played at Rice in the last 50 years.
And North Texas, the only reason we know that is because the foreign communications company plane flies into Denton, which is where North Texas is. We drive right by that stadium.
And we drive by it on the North Texas Expressway every time we go from the Denton airport to Frisco.
It's a nice stadium.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
No,
but I don't know
it's
who goes to that.
It's going to be a growing university in a booming part of the country, the North Dallas suburbs. And so, I mean, that's attractive as well.
So do you want to lay out the groundwork? You did this so well in your column today of how we even got here, because this is really convoluted, obviously starting with when we did this pod in July, and I think people were like, why are you talking about with Oklahoma and Texas?
Why do we care about Oklahoma and Texas and Fargo?
Because this is why.
Because as we all know, and again, I don't think the fans follow it as closely as we do or the hardcore fans, but Oklahoma and Texas left the Big 12 to go to the Southeastern Conference. That means the Big 12 had to find more schools to make the Big 12 12 again. So they went and got actually four schools from the AAC.
And one independent.
In BYU. And so now the conference from which they got 3 of their schools, the AAC, is now looking to expand and get schools from other conferences, which appear to be a couple of schools from the Mountain West, most likely Colorado State and Air Force. And so if those 2 schools leave the Mountain West, then as Chris Vanini wrote today, and we all knew, then the Mountain West has to make a decision. What do they want to do? Do they want to remain at 10? Do they want to go for 2 more schools and get back to 12? Do they want to take 4 schools?
Yeah.
Because there's a possibility now that the Big 12 is looking at taking San Diego State
and BYU.
Well, no,
I'm sorry, Boise State. Sorry,
Boise State and San Diego State and Memphis. And so all of these pieces mean that these conferences are looking for schools. And so that means a place like North Dakota State could be a possibility to be a member of the Mountain West, which is going to lead to your next question. If Boise State, Air Force, Colorado State, and San Diego State all leave the Mountain West, and the Mountain West comes calling for North Dakota State, is the Mountain West then attractive enough for NDSU to say, sure, let's do it? And I don't know the answer to that question. I think
it's still a yes.
Okay, that's
to
one.
Me it is.
That's one that I have not posed to my sources I talk with around college football and, frankly, at North Dakota State.
What's your gut on that?
I don't know that from a personal. I don't know that it makes me tingle as much as it did.
Yeah.
If you don't have San Diego State, Boise, Colorado State and Air Force. Colorado State and Air Force. That's 2 really attractive opponents for NDSU.
Close opponents,
and
too.
Close opponents that people could drive to every other year if they wanted to.
We have both reached out to North Dakota State Athletic Director Matt Larson for comment. He said he had no comment. A lot of schools are mentioned these days. He's right about that.
That's pretty much what he said.
A lot of schools are mentioned these days.
But what needs to be pointed out, though, is that NDSU
hasn't been one of them, though.
Has now been mentioned. And, James Madison, I don't know if James Madison is doing the mentioning more than the conferences are doing the mentioning about James Madison, but they are in the mix. And we don't know if a Montana or a Montana State, they have money there as well. They don't have the brand that North Dakota State does, for sure. But they're actually in the Mountain West region as opposed to NDSU, which is in the Great Plains.
Geography has always been the biggest hurdle in your mind, and I don't think it's changed.
I don't think it's just in my mind.
I think logically it's still there.
Several years ago, when Georgia Southern moved from FCS to FBS, I talked with the then athletic director at Georgia Southern, and he said, "Look, NDSU is just as ready as it." This is back in 2014. He said NDSU is as ready as anybody to move from FCS to FBS. But he said, as I used to tell my old friend Gene Taylor, he was lucky up there in Fargo because it wasn't an option. Right. Because geography had him landlocked, that NDSU was never going to be mentioned in the Conference USA discussion, in the Sun Belt discussion, in the MAC discussion, in the AAC discussion. And so Gene didn't really have to make a decision.
This is fascinating because I read a couple stories on this. Pete Thamel was out there saying, especially for the group of 5 ADs, to say, can we just take a pause and not poach from one another? But that seemed like pie in the sky to me, that was not going to happen.
Right. Well, the other interesting angle here is, and Craig Thompson, the commissioner of the Mountain West, said this publicly, but I've heard it from others as well around college football in general that I've talked to, is the AAC really that attractive right now?
Without the schools that are there.
If you are Colorado State and Air Force, is the AAC any better than what the Mountain West is right now? Because the AAC lost their 3 premier programs.
Cincinnati, Houston, and Central Florida.
I mean, Central Florida and Cincinnati
really
and
Houston's no slouch either.
But those 3 schools are what made the AAC what it was. So if you are Colorado State, do you say, well, all right, we can stop playing UNLV now and go play East Carolina instead? Right. That's a lot better.
And there are some financial ramifications for this because this is not a football-only move.
No.
The American will want them for everything.
Yes.
So now you're going to fly your volleyball team from Fort Collins, Colorado to, I don't even know what town East Carolina's in. to North Carolina.
Right.
It's a ways away.
Yes.
My geography tells me that North Carolina and Colorado are not near one another.
Right.
There's a huge financial burden that goes with this.
But the other way to look at it,
TV contract too.
Well, it's at least, is it less or is it about equal?
I think it's going to go down with those schools leaving, though. That's the story out there, is that there's no way that ESPN is going to pay the American what they had, which is like $6 million, if those schools you just mentioned aren't in the league anymore.
The other way to look at it, though, is the Mountain West right now is not a bus league. Everybody flies everywhere. And so if you're going to fly an hour to Las Vegas.
Right, if you're flying from Fort Collins to Fresno, what's the difference?
Whether you fly from there, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but it's not like if you're a Summit League team, and that's going to be one of the hurdles for NDSU.
Greenville, by the way, North Carolina.
Yes,
I didn't know.
That's one of the hurdles for NDSU, as we've talked about before. Is I don't think that NDSU can do this for all sports, and is the Mountain West ready to say, well, we'll just take you for football only? That's a huge part of this,
no doubt,
equation.
Absolutely.
So
what if the Mountain West comes to Fargo and says, all right, we want you, but we want you for everything?
I don't know if NDSU can do that.
I don't think so either.
Just from a monetary standpoint.
No way.
And I don't know that they'd want to. I mean,
they're in a perfect situation in the Summit League.
Yes. I mean, it would help your recruiting if you're Dave Richmond. The Mountain West is a whole different animal than the Summit League. And so
you could argue the Mountain West is maybe the top group of 5 basketball league out there.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's really good.
San Diego State.
They consistently get multiple teams into the tournament.
Yes.
So it's not a one-bid league.
If you're Dave Richmond or Jory Collins, you're saying, well, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you can do it financially. Because you're going from busing to Brookings, your volleyball team, your golf team, your baseball team, your basketball teams. Then you're flying everybody to the West Coast, and we can ask UND how that was in the Big Sky Conference.
Right.
And one of the reasons they wanted to get out of the Big Sky
the
much,
Big Sky wanted them out too,
was the money part of it. It wasn't the competition part of it. It was the money part of it.
I look at the American, to your point, without those schools, and let's assume Memphis is gone too. That Memphis is going to go because that's a good
Big
area,
12. Yep.
and they're going to go to the Big 12 too. That league would now be left of, here you go, SMU, East Carolina, South Florida, your guys at Temple, Tulane, Navy, and Tulsa. That's Conference USA.
So I don't know if you're Colorado State or Air Force, I don't know why you'd want to leave.
Unless you just don't want to be in the Mountain West anymore. If that's the only reason. That would be the only reason. We just don't want to be, we want to be associated with a different conference now. I don't know.
Okay.
I guess.
I guess. I
don't know.
I mean, if you're Boise or San Diego State, you're going, go, and we'll just go to the Big 12 then.
Yep.
I think either way, and this is now spinning it back here to Fargo, either way, there's going to be teams leaving the Mountain West, whether it's to the Big 12, whether it's to the AAC, whether something else. I don't think that the Mountain West stays together as it is right now. That's the key, is that whatever these teams do, they do. But I think there's going to be an opening, and then it's up to the Mountain West to say, do we want North Texas, or do we want to call up Matt Larson at North Dakota State and say, let's talk about this?
Who was our guy at North Texas who was going to get the Kansas State job? Because they've flamed out since then. They're 1-2. I can't remember.
Norville?
No, he was he was the Memphis coach. I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But they haven't been anything since then in 2018.
Nope.
Rice, has they ever been good in football? I know they're really good at baseball.
Well, I mean, back in the old Southwest Conference days in the 1940s, I think Rice was probably. But Rice is a very high academic institution, though. Rice is a
absolutely.
super duper high,
really good school.
School.
Yep. The other part of this, and we mentioned these guys about a month ago on my show, and it looks like a foregone conclusion according to Vanini's article, is UAB. That they're going to go to the American.
That's an obvious.
And that makes a ton of sense.
And that boosts the American, by the way.
Absolutely. You're in Alabama.
Yes,
I mean, you talk about Texas. The other spot you want to be is Alabama right now for your college football. So that makes a ton of sense for them to go. So they obviously would look for a membership there.
That boosts the AAC.
And then maybe that's the opening for James Madison in CUSA if they're
Do they want CUSA, though? So you have to remember...
I think they would take anything now.
I don't know that they will.
No?
I don't know, but I mean, James Madison does a great job. I've been treated very well by my friends at James Madison over the years, but there is a level of arrogance there that they think that they're something maybe that other leagues don't see them as. And this, I mean, you can say the same about North Dakota State.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that NDSU is being arrogant about this, about FBS, but we have to keep in mind that because we live in this bubble, that the rest of the world doesn't look at NDSU and go, "Oh my God, they have to take NDSU."
Right, correct.
Just the way that other schools or other leagues don't look at James Madison and go, "Oh my God, we have to take James Madison."
Two things on this before I want to wrap up. The other part that I have not seen is Coastal Carolina, because I thought they were going to be somewhere in the mix, and they have been not mentioned, which doesn't mean they're not being spoken to, but I thought they would be near, with the success they've had, they would be near the front of the line on one of these leagues wanting them.
Yeah, that one might be
maybe there's more behind that than we know.
Academic
probably
situation as well. I don't know that Coastal Carolina is known as the Harvard of
Myrtle Beach
of South Carolina.
They're no Clemson of South Carolina.
No, certainly. There's no way. They're no South Alabama of Alabama.
It's ironic we're talking about this tonight because the game on ESPN tonight, and I thought right to you when I saw this tonight, Marshall is playing Appalachian State tonight on ESPN.
Yep.
Two FCS powers, as it were, 25, even 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years
25
ago.
years ago for Marshall. And then about 15 for App State when they're in the midst of their run. They're playing on national television tonight. They'll get a pretty good audience for that. Granted, there's an NFL game tonight, but there will be. This is the potential. If you were to go, you could have this in Fargo on a Thursday night in September, maybe.
And I don't know that the fans care about that. And we've talked about this before. Is I think there's been a little movement to the let's go side of the ledger. If a year or two ago it was 40-60 against, I think it might be 60-40 for now. And
I think that's right.
And now that it's becoming a little more real, that their name has come up, NDSU's name has come up in some discussions, now people might be looking at it going, well, let's look into this Mountain West and what's this all about? And I think you might see maybe people shift their thinking a little bit. And I'll just use this as an example. I have a friend of mine who has been an NDSU fan, but not like a crazy guy, but his company had season tickets for years. He's just one of those guys, likes NDSU football. I talked to him last night, and he said, so how are the Bison doing?
Wow.
I said, they're doing okay. Why? He goes, does anybody care? I said, well, I think so, because our analytics numbers and
I hope for our company's sake they care.
I said, that's okay. And he goes, well, I don't.
Wow.
Because I don't know who Towson is. I don't care who Towson is. He said, I would rather see them get their butts kicked by USC or Oregon or anybody than beat Towson by 500 points. He goes, I don't care anymore. So he's all in.
He's all in on that.
For what it's worth. I mean, for what it's worth. And he's just a guy, but he does own a local business, and he has
season tickets.
Held season tickets for years, and he's, one of those guys.
I don't think he's alone. I've heard more of that, too, from hardcore fans that used to never miss a game that say, I'm okay sitting at home and watching now. That's not even to the extreme of what you're talking about, but that's still from going to like the very top level to halfway down on the and
it's
Richter
no knock on NDSU.
No.
I mean, let's make my friends they're good. He goes, don't get me wrong, they're outstanding.
Yep.
But he said they're too good for where they're at, and it's boring because they win every game. And he said, so if they lose a couple of games this year, big deal. They're going to win 9 and win 3 playoff games minimum. He goes, it's the same every year.
The last thing I want to say on this, because the conference commissioners met yesterday about expanding the playoff, and that's the big caveat to all of this, as you well know, since you've written about it, and I've talked about it, that the spot has to be guaranteed for the group of 5, which they're not going to sign off on unless it is guaranteed. There's no way the playoff is expanding unless the group of 5 has a seat in the playoff, and that's what the whole hang-up is on whether this is going to happen with its 8 teams. I still think it's going to be 12, and now it's just a matter of when. It may not be 2023. It might be 2026, which for NDSU, that wouldn't be the worst thing either.
That'd be just fine.
If it's that.
And let's keep this in mind. Okay, so if that's the carrot, you're going to tell fans.
It has to be, right?
Right. There has to be something there and people are hung up on, well, you can't win a championship. You can't win a championship. But you've already won 16 of them, and you've won 8 of them in FCS. I mean, how many can you win before you go, well, all right, 20 championships?
Like, how many more times to Frisco do you want to go?
And so if the carrot is you just get a game in the playoffs, you're the best group of 5 team in the country, which is a huge challenge, by the way.
That's a huge lift.
Yes. But if that's it, then that's it. You get a game in the playoffs.
And
you play Oklahoma on whatever, New Year's Day in front of 25 million people on television. And if you get your ass kicked 45-10, who cares?
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Or you play a on-campus game at the Swamp in Florida.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or you're playing Baton Rouge against LSU and whatever, however it goes, and you have 25 million people watching the game. How many times do Bison fans come up to you? Because I know they come to me, man, that K-State game was amazing. That Iowa game, what an atmosphere.
Yeah.
That Gopher game at TCF Bank Stadium, that was fantastic. I hear that way more often than I do.
Man, that game against Wofford
or Jacksonville State
in 2017 was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like you don't hear that because they won 47-10.
That just those are the games that people talk about. And if that
and wait until next year when NDSU plays at Arizona. It's going to be there's going to be 30,000 Bison fans in that stadium because it's going to be in Tucson, Arizona in September, and nobody in Tucson gives a rip about Arizona football. And so it's going to be 30,000 Bison fans inside the Arizona Stadium.
Arizona, by the way, is 0-3.
Right. And NDSU's going to win that game probably by 3 touchdowns.
We could win that game, too. Before we go, you originally categorized this as moonshot. Do you want to change that?
Nope. Still there. Nope.
Okay.
Still there. I was thinking about that today. You and I are thinking the same. Because I went back and read my original column on that. It's time for NDSU to prepare for the moonshot. I still think it is.
Okay.
Financially,
still a lot of money
because of the football only thing, and whether or not enough people support it. The president of NDSU right now is a lame duck.
Yep.
I mean,
there's a lot there still beyond all the conference stuff, president stuff. There's a lot huge political angle in this in the state of North Dakota.
Yes. I mean, do you think look what happened in Oklahoma and in Texas when those schools were going to there were politicians trying to block it.
The governor of Texas was involved in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't think that's going to happen here?
Oh, my God, yeah.
Among the small-minded North Dakotans who want the Bison UND game to be what it was in 1995? Yep. Of course it's going to happen. There's people griping the last time they went from Division II to Division I. But that was more in those days of well, good luck. You're going to fail anyway.
Don't you think it would be the same now?
I don't think so. No? I don't know. I don't, because now they've seen what NDSU can do at FCS, and
I still think some people will be like, good luck up there.
And, okay.
Get your brains beat in up there.
Good.
Yeah.
I hope that's what they say if this comes to pass, because I was one of those guys early on that said this is a bad move for NDSU. I'm not going to let that happen again. This would be, for the state of North Dakota, this would be a big deal. You would be on everywhere, the West Coast.
Every game would be televised everywhere. If you're upset about the Towson game not being on TV.
On Flow Sports. Yeah. There is no Flow Sports.
Flow Sports at that level.
No.
You know what it's called? ESPN.
Yes.
Or the
CBS. Or
Fox Sports. Right? The best part about this is that it's happening in light speed. This is happening so fast right now. And by the time we post this, it could be outdated.
Right.
There might be other teams moving, but from where we were in, early mid-July, from when this first started to now here we are at the end of September, look how much has happened already.
But we knew that. It actually, when we talked in July, I thought it was going to happen. I thought more was going to happen immediately. I thought what was happening now was going to happen
like last month,
immediately.
Okay.
But it's just taken a little while, and then it's just, whoo.
It's just fascinating to watch. It makes it so much fun for a bye week where you think there's nothing
what
happening.
A time to be alive.
Right, good stuff going on there.
Yep.
We got to come up with a better name for this now, since we're going to probably do this more often. Realignment Roundtable. I don't know. Find something good for it. You come up with that.
Just hype the crap on the emergency. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Realignment podcast
with the sirens and all that good
absolutely.
stuff. For Mike McFeely, I'm Dom Izzo. Thanks everybody for listening.